Hello, so I am going to read some of my favorite parts from the ebook Being by Ellis. Instant Future put this out, which is future tense books, but they're ebooks, and you can only get them as ebooks, I believe. You can get them on their website, or I think I got mine through Goodreads, through my Kindle. I don't really use my Kindle that often because, well, I actually like books, like physical, concrete books. But I also lost my charger for my Kindle, and I recently found it, and I rediscovered this book that I read a few months ago, and it's really good. It's a really short memoir, so I'm going to read this. Not all of it, but I'm going to read the introduction, or the beginning, I mean. And then on your Kindle, it allows you to highlight your favorite parts, things like that, and it puts it in like a notepad kind of thing. I'm going to read what I highlighted. I'm not sure what I highlighted, so there might be some awkward or just some silent parts of this video of me looking through it. But here we go. This is the very beginning. Being transgender is typing transgender into your computer and seeing a red line underneath it, which means it's an unrecognized word and you look beneath you to see if there's a red line too. I don't know if you can mourn something you've never had, but I'm in mourning. When I want to process something, I don't capitalize words, unless they're important words. That's how you'll know. I was born without a penis. I was born with girl parts, but a boy's brain and a boy's soul, and a boy's feelings and a boy's heart. You just have to take my word for it. I don't know what happened, but I used to believe there was a mix-up somewhere in the roasting pan of my mother's womb. Maybe it was the Mexican food she might have tried, or the MSG at a Chinese restaurant. Maybe it was a silent prayer I made to her patient as a fetus. Whatever the case, my insides and my outsides were not a match. I realized very young that God had gotten my mom and dad's order wrong. The big problem is that there was no kitchen to send me back and fix the problem. I don't know the exact day, minute, or second that I was aware something was off, but I do remember a time hanging out with the neighborhood kids, mostly boys, at a local river. I must have been no more than 7 or 8. All of the boys took their shirts off before jumping in the river. I was jealous. I had no noticeable breasts at the time, but I knew I was physically different from these boys. I took my shirt off and jumped in too. None of the boys noticed or said anything, but I made sure to say, "Just pretend I'm one of you." It was scary and exhilarating feeling to be free that way, the way I imagine a shipwreck survivor feels touching land again. Okay. And then the very beginning, he just goes on, talks about how he was an androgynous child and kind of how he began to feel that he should have been born a guy. And I'm just going to go on and read my favorite parts that I had noted. Let's see. Okay. My therapist calls it mourning. I don't like that idea because there's such a finality to it. There's no clear way to end this. No way to wrap it up in a neat sentence or catchy analog. Being transgender feels like a lump in your pants when you are so depressed you neglect to take your testosterone for a month and your period starts again and you are sticking a pad in your shorts before you shave and put on a tie. There are a lot of things that make me never want to leave the comfort of my own fucked up brain. Near the top of the list is anything menstrual or vaginal. 3 days ago I got my period. In 7 years, this is the second time that's happened. Hormones. For me, it's an exercise in humiliation. I'm sure there's a word I get attached to phobe to probably express my feelings. Homophobe, uterophobe, whatever you call it, I call it an insult. It's the ultimate reminder that I'm transgendered, that I'm not the man I imagine myself to be. It's hard to feel masculine when there's blood exiting your body because that's what your body was built to do. Buying supplies for the blessed event is a charade. I play the part of sensitive new age guy buying mental products for his female friend very well. I take out my phone while standing in front of the eruption of Kotex products, pretending to read an invisible text with an invisible shopping list for my wife, who is obviously too unwell cramped to leave the house, and has trusted her beloved man to pick up the right brand. Only her man is a little stupid to remember brands or thickness preferences, like a more confident Homer Simpson. I stare at my phone, imagining the words ultra thin glaring at me. Not being a tampon man, I reach for the ultra thick bordering on diaper Kotex pads. I mean, I trust those thin pads to trick. If anyone sees that blood has left my body, I want it to be in a knife fight or something very manly. Okay, and then he goes on more and more about that. Okay, so you can tell from the title, it's called, the memoir is called Being, and a lot of parts in his book, he says being transgender is blank, 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 and I'm going to read something like that again. Being transgender is like the rust on an old pipe when you look at yourself in the mirror and realize you don't cry anymore, and yet your eyes look like they've been crying for years. I thought that when I started injecting testosterone into my bloodstream that I would lose my ability to cry. I honestly hoped that would be the case. I never enjoyed crying. My own, that is. There was always a severe sense of vulnerability that came with tears. Even if I was alone, I never seemed to cry at the right times. Death and heartache were pretty much tear-free for me. The only time I could be counted not to cry was during award shows. I have no explanation for this phenomenon. Perhaps it's the split screenshots of the nominees and anticipation. Having worked for something and being shown the recognition for that work. Or maybe just the realization that these people were making far too much money. Whatever the case, get a hardworking actor, singer, or dancer in fancy attire, standing behind a microphone, holding something shiny, and I'm a mess. Okay. Being transgender is always wondering if you did the right thing. Being transgender is always wondering if you said it the right way. Being transgender is always wondering if there is always enough love for you. Being transgender is defined as brave, but it feels no more brave than breathing. Being transgender is always wondering if your daughter will keep loving you once she understands you're not like other dads. I wanted to write something deep and poetic about the way I was parented, or not parented, as the case may be. I feel that as a parent myself, it's my duty to pass on to my daughter some rules, some guidelines to get her through the hard times. I came up with a small list. I hope that someday it might come in handy for her. Dear Vivian, I've had to learn a thing or two on my own about how to be in this world. I don't want to parent you like I was parented. I want you to have things I never had. Self-esteem and confidence, for example. I used to wish for a guidebook that would tell me how to act in certain situations, or how to deal with unfamiliar things. I hope that this letter can be that guidebook for you. I've made a list and wanted to share some of the important things I desperately needed my mom and dad to tell me when I was growing up. I hope it helps you if you ever need it. 1. 7-Eleven is not a restaurant. I don't care how much allowance you have saved, you are not allowed to count a Slurpee and or a bag of Doritos as dinner. Blueberry Slurpees do not count as a serving of fruit, and the orange stuff on nacho cheese Doritos is not actually cheese, so therefore it does not count as protein or as dairy. 2. Anything in a box with the word helper tacked on it is also not dinner. If you need a helper to make you dinner, you let me know and I will gladly help you. Number 3. I like this one. There is no rush to be an adult. You only have one childhood. There will be plenty of time for schedules and anxiety. This is the time to play with your toys, to be fascinated instead of embarrassed, to be excited about anything that's new. At your age, the words hip and cool should only refer to body parts and temperature. Like whatever the hell you want to like, even if it's Disney princesses. You're allowed. Number 4. I go to AA meetings because I have a strong suspicion that I would completely suck as a father if I were drinking. That said, if I ever have to take you to an AA meeting, I promise not to make you memorize the slogans hanging on the wall. I will get you as many hot cups of hot chocolate as you need. 1. And if there's a cake to celebrate someone's sobriety anniversary, I will always share my peace with you. 5. I have dreams that include traveling to England someday. I enjoy opera, though I don't always understand what's being said. I like masterpiece theater, doing the Sunday New York Times crossword puzzle and pen, using a bookmark rather than dog-earing a book. I happen to know a shocking amount about a group of women referred to as the Real Housewives. I promise not to push any of my interests on you. There will be a time in your life when you might not have a clue why I enjoy the things I do. And equally, I will scratch my head at whatever interests you. That's just part of what parents and kids do. I loved Kiss when I was young. I'll explain them to you another time. And I'm sure my parents did not understand why I wanted to paint my face like a cat when I was learning to play the drums. 6. Love your body, despite what the world might say. Your value has nothing to do with the shape of your size of it, or your size of it. Value has to do with the heart and the mind, and kindness and love. You are perfect from head to toe. Number 7. I have loved you from the moment I knew you existed. I couldn't speak for almost 15 minutes after you were born. You should know by now that for me to be silent that long is pretty unusual. I was silent because from the first second I saw you, I couldn't believe that I would get to be your dad. There were no words to equal the joy I felt when those big brown eyes of yours looked at me. Please try and remember when you're a teenager and feeling like a misfit or feeling unloved for whatever reason, that no matter what you were wanted and hoped for, and I am so grateful for you. 8. I wanted to raise you as an indoor child. It's true. I didn't want the world to hurt you. Forgive me if I hover too closely at the park when you're climbing on the play structures or utter the phrase, "Is that safe?" once too often. 9. Ask me anything without fear. I won't leave. If I do, it's probably just got to go the next room to find a book that might have the answer if I don't. Okay, I need to go. Okay, I'm back in the bathroom. I left off on number 10. There will probably be a time, or 4, or 5, when I embarrass you. I'd like to think it might be because I know the lyrics to so many musicals, or because I still can't remember if it's Snow White or Sleeping Beauty that eats the poison apple. And I have to ask you why Sleeping Beauty has 3 names anyway. I worry a lot that what will embarrass you most about me is that, like you, I used to be a little girl. I know that having a dad who understands that time of the month is probably not something that you would have chosen, if and when you become embarrassed by me because I am transgender. I want you to know that I will understand. I know how it feels to want normal. I might not be able to teach you about princesses or fairies, but I can teach you how to be brave. Sorry, I had too much wine. There will be times when you have to stand up for yourself. Times when you have to make choices that you know other people might not understand or agree with. But you have to act because your heart and soul and guts tell you to. I hope that when those times come, you will remember to call me, and I will tell you about bravery and remind you that no matter what, your life and happiness are worth standing up for. Okay, 10A. Just because I understand the time of the month all too well, don't worry, I'm not going to talk about my dollar cramps. I would freak out if my father had done that to me, regardless of his biological origins. 11, it's the last one. Princesses can fall in love with other princesses and have just as good time at the ball. Love, Dad. I'm going to see what my last favorite note is, and then that will be it. And then, if you're watching this, you should buy this because it's only a few bucks. Maybe like 5 at the most, which is still a few bucks. But it's important. It's important to understand how this person feels, how transgender people feel. Okay, the last thing I highlighted was I wanted them to know how it felt for me to look in the mirror after a shower and see a flat chest and feel like I finally recognized the person looking back at me. That's really sweet. Okay, I'm going to read one more when he says being transgender is, and then we'll wrap it up. Being transgender is being asked if you are done yet. Being transgender is seeing a letter change on your driver's license. Being transgender is walking at night and not feeling afraid. Being transgender is understanding how it feels to be raped. Being transgender is understanding abortion intimately. Awesome. Yeah, so that's it's a little taste of it. I will put the link on where you could buy it in the description. So it's called. Have a good night. Cheers.